Mi gente, you already know who it is. It's the radioactive Papa Danny Limelight, United Wrestling Network World Heavyweight Champion. And make sure you tune into the Alliance blog every week. You heard it here first. Straight from Papa.
Okay, guys, we're back. Did you miss us? Because we missed you.
Rules?
There are no rules.
What rules?
This is a revolution, damn it!
You'll hear things you've never heard before.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here?
Who are those guys?
And then there's the other guys.
We're the other guys. We're the guys nobody ever bets on.
The following program is intended for mature audiences.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show.
It's time for the Other Alliance Guys podcast with your hosts, Tim, Dave, and Jeremy.
You know, no matter how many times I hear the intro, it still ramps me up. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and what can we tell you? We are the greatest six-man tag team in pro wrestling podcasting in the world, except for probably several hundred other thousand, but we are the Alliance Guys, other Alliance Guys. Oh my God, the Alliance Guys. We've taken over. We are the other Alliance Guys. This is what happens when you're off for 2 weeks because of Super Bowls and Snowmageddons. But we are the other Alliance Guys. A presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information around the National Wrestling Alliance, United Wrestling Network, and various independents around the world. My name is Tim. Sometimes I like wrestling. Not always, but sometimes. And I am joined by this, Dave looks like he's doing the robot right now. He's like, fantasy booker extraordinaire Dave Scooby. How are you, my friend? Is he there?
I think Dave may be experiencing technical
difficulties on Dave's part, perhaps. Can you hear us, Dave? He'll be back. And our eater of chicky nugs, it's Championship Wrestling from Jeremy. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing well, sir. I'm doing well.
Is it fine? Is it warm out there? Has it been bad for you and out in the area?
We got up to about 60 today, and we're going to do the same tomorrow. But up until yesterday, we had been frigidly cold, to put it mildly.
Yeah. I don't know what 60 is, but, I'm going to say that that's somewhat warmer than it has been.
Light jacket weather, as opposed to heavy coat, scarf, sock hat, gloves, and insulated thermal underwear and such.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Here's Dave in the green room. I can see him right now. Should I add you in, Dave? You ready to go? We'll give him a sec. What are we talking about today, though? Wow, we are relatively unpopular in the chat today. We usually have many more people on than we have right now that I can see. Scooby got knocked off. We'll give him a sec. Willie Bowen, Tyrus invented the Hunger Games. I hear that anyone who dies is put on the banquet table for Tyrus to eat in those particular games. Sometimes not to get political, but sometimes it feels in the world climate that we're in today that we're not too far off from the Hunger Games,
I must concur there.
It's going
glad
crazy.
You guys won your hockey game.
We did. In overtime, 4-3. That's the way it should be. Look, you guys have football. You got baseball.
Yeah, we've got more places that are warm than are cold and have ice on them. We have no business trying to play you guys' sport. That's you guys' shit. I get out there. I look like Bambi on ice if you put me in a pair of skates. It's not happening.
Yeah, well, there was once. I don't know if it's true anymore. I'm going to see if I can. Dave, you want me to put you back in? He's covered it up with his hand. I once heard that there were more ice rinks in the province of Ontario, which is, more or less like the size of New York State, than there is in all the United States. And I don't know that we're that much better. Like America's got a lot of great hockey players, and in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't amount to a hill of beans. When anytime the United States wanted to, we would become the 51st state of America. But we'll take what we can get at this point.
I'd much rather become the 11th province.
Yeah.
I mean, as opposed to taking, that just seems wrong.
Yeah.
You guys have been our friends for years. There's no reason to be acting foolish like that.
I have a lot of thoughts about it, but sometimes it doesn't mix with what the alliance is all about. We recognize all thoughts and opinions and viewpoints, be it right, left, or centrist, like this guy. So, Rosville's here.
What's up?
What's going on, man? Or is this Willie says Southern California, Hawaii, Arizona, Texas, and Florida, America's hot places. Yeah. We'll be your cold place up with Michigan and stuff like that. I wonder, Dave, I'm assuming you can hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay, great. Dave, I wonder if we ought to go make plans to hit some independent shows, maybe a dog wrestling show, or how far are you from Detroit, where I think Willie is?
I don't even know. A couple hours, maybe.
Couple hours? Maybe an MLP show just across the border in Windsor. It's a couple hours from me. But that's what's his name, Scott Demore's company, right?
Yeah.
They're running, and I think that Tom Latimer is defending the world championship there at some point in the next month or so.
Interesting.
Yeah. What are we talking about this episode, guys? We're talking about the Alliance Wrestling Hall of Fame. We are talking about Willie's in Northwest Detroit. We're talking about Willie, come to the MLP show. I might take my kid and head over there and watch Tom Latimer. I don't know who else is there. Taylor Rising. There's probably a whole list of people. Last week, the last time we were on, which was 3 weeks ago, we had a couple of people for the Alliance Wrestling Hall of Fame. I don't think the voting ever went out. Unless I'm completely off my rocker, which is possible because I had even forgotten that we had Damian Wayne to team it up. I don't think the voting ever went out. That's entirely on my fault. So I'll have to do 4 votes this time and update everyone last time. What are you idiots doing back here? Anyway, cats, sorry. But we'll talk about 2 more entries that are going up for your voting, assuming that we allow the voting to ever take place, in Rob Conway and Satoshi Kojima, and hence the wonderful graphic that Jeremy created of the Bread Club. It might be my favorite thumbnail ever this week.
I poured so much time into this that those mountain ranges were built croissant by croissant.
It's beautiful.
That field was almost built loaf by loaf. If you look hard enough, you can see where I finally got to this point where I could copy paste. But yeah, I pushed the program that I utilize to make thumbnails to its limit and beyond, because AI and all these great programs that all these great minds are pushing that are the next wave just couldn't match what I was seeing. And this still isn't exactly what was up here, but it's the closest that I could get. And I'm quite happy with it.
It's beautiful. I like Conway. He normally would be standing there going, "Hey, look, I'm the greatest," holding the croissant.
Yep.
It's wonderful. And Jeremy's gonna talk about he's gonna review the second level of hate from the 7 levels of hate battle between Colt Cabana and Adam Pearce back in the day. Maybe my favorite feud of all time. It's up there anyway. And then Dave's going to talk about, this one's kind of a little bit edgy, at least on the surface. If what would the wrestling landscape look like today if Bruiser Brody hadn't been murdered in Puerto Rico? Hulk Hogan says he was there now. Did you hear that? Was that about a year ago? Yeah.
Hulk Hogan was also president for his own conception.
And he was the bass player for Metallica.
Yeah.
That's right.
He defies time and wrestles 400 days in a year. I mean, there is nothing that man cannot do but tell the fucking truth.
It's true.
And not be a racist piece of shit. But I digress.
Yeah, fuck that guy.
No, that's okay. I don't want to.
That's what my wife always says. If Willie says if Frey the Slay is gonna be at that show, then he's gonna be there. I like Frey. I think Frey was a talent. Just like geography originally for her up there in Alaska was probably something that Last I saw, she had like a when I still had Instagram, she had a mobile home, and she was living in a mobile home, touring around the United States. And I'm like, that's brilliant.
Yep. That's
great. Making talent. So, Hogan is a legitimate liar and a nauseating asshole. 100%.
Yep.
No time for that guy. And you know what? When I was a kid, when I was first started watching wrestling, my favorite wrestler, it was Hulk Hogan that dragged me into pro wrestling, over the, become a huge fan.
And it was the larger than life fucking Andre and the mouth that just had no barrier and fucking Roddy Piper.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, Piper went to my high school. And yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He's older than me, but long gone and a professional wrestler by the time I got there. But so that's what we're going to be doing today. And I also got a bit of a surprise for you guys based on something else I heard on a podcast that probably millions of people listen to. If we can get to it later, let's talk about the Hall of Fame this week. However, as the first nominee number 9 out of the 8, out of the 10 that will be done after today. This is awkward. Satoshi Kojima for the Alliance Wrestling Hall of Fame, and arguing on the leader of the Bread Club's behalf, it's our friend Jeremy. What do you got?
Well, the great Satoshi Kojima was born on September the 14th of 1970, which is 2 days and 7 years before my birthday. So that right there, we're birthday neighbors. So automatically he's in it for me. But Satoshi Kojima is a champion both in the ring and to bakeries around the world. A man with the stones to go public and say, "Hey, Atkins Diet, fuck out of here with your bread shaming. I'm going to eat as much bread as I want to and still look like a beast." A former NWA World Heavyweight Champion and Tag Champion, 7-time IWGP Tag Champion, 2-time MLW World Heavyweight Champion, 2-time MLW Tag Champion, a 2-time Never Openweight 6-Man Tag Champion, a 2-time Triple Crown Champ, a GHCW Heavyweight Champ, All Asia Tag Champ, and 3-time AJPW World Tag Champ. That's 22, if you're counting, titles that this man has held.
Wow.
That right there is impressive.
Yep.
What's more impressive is that this man is 54 years old. As I said, still looks like a beast. is still going, main eventing for MLW right now.
Yep.
He's in their main event scene. He, by all accounts, is one of the nicest individuals in wrestling from what I've heard and read about. Extremely welcoming to fans, loves interaction with them, is a specimen of a human being and just an unrivaled talent in the ring. Again, stressing the fact that this man is 54 years old and is out there putting on matches like he's still like 27, 28. You know, it behooves us to welcome this man into the Alliance Hall of Fame. It would be a great disservice to not only him, but the wrestling world to not have him in our Hall of Fame. The writing's on the wall. Satoshi Kojima and the Bread Club shall reign supreme in the Alliance Hall of Fame. That being said, that is totally up to you, the fans. Don't make me show up at your door.
Well, there you go. Is it a threat? Is it a threat? Is it a promise?
The bread will be stale, so it's a threat.
Oh, okay. All right.
And bread dries out quick here and gets really, really rock hard. So don't fuck around.
I mean, he has an indie bend. He is, in the sense that, you know, as you say, he's had all these titles around the type of promotions that the Alliance has, you know, hopefully supported, I think, over the years. We love our MLW. It's hard to say no, but arguing against the Kojima's induction into the Hall of Fame, Dave Scooby, how could you? How could you possibly argue?
Well, because you told me I had to.
What do you got, Dave?
Well, you got to have a positive and a negative, two sides to every story. There's a heads, there's a tails. Now, going against him being put into a Hall of Fame, the Alliance Hall of Fame, Kojima, now if it's only going by NWA standards, he had a shorter reign, but it was a mighty NWA run as the holder of the 10 pounds of gold. In my opinion, it just helped the other guy we'll be talking about, Rob Conway. It helped his build to becoming a multi-time NWA champion, and it gave the 10 pounds of gold more of an international feel, making it a real world's title. Back in January of 2014 at Wrestle Kingdom, Tokyo Dome, January 4th, Kojima defeated Conway to become the new NWA World Heavyweight Champion. And the following day, the tag team of Tenkozy, Tenzin, and Kojima unsuccessfully challenged the Iron Gods, Conway and Jax Dane, for the NWA World Tag titles. Now, this was a back and forth over the next couple months. That it was an international feel in all the four of these gentlemen wrestling with each other, against each other in Japan. And it was one of these things that when Tenkozy finally defeated the Iron Gods and won the NWA World Tag titles, it was almost unheard of to have a heavyweight title and a tag title in hand, that you are a multi-time champion at the same time. So it's one of these things that New Japan, they went everywhere when they were over in Japan. They had Wrestle Kingdom, they had the New Beginning on Osaka. Rob Conway was a made man, as well as Jax Dane, when they went over there trading all these titles back and forth. And when they ended up defending the when Kojima ended up returning to the U.S. to defend the 10 pounds of gold, he successfully had defenses against our own Plunky, Jeremiah Plunkett, Damian Wayne, and Houston Carson. But then Kojima ended up losing the title back to Rob Conway in June of that year of 2014 in Las Vegas. Now, that's a short 6 months, basically. He only had the title for 149 days. In my eyes, it was just used to up the value of the 10 pounds of gold. Maybe in another time period, it was one of these things that, giving an international feel, Kojima could have had a longer run, help make more of an impact on the NWA. But if you look at his full wrestling resume, he's been everywhere. I mean, he's wrestled for TNA Impact, MLW currently. He was one of the first MLW champions. He's wrestled for the NWA, All Japan, New Japan, NOAH, CMLL. He even wrestled for AEW over the past couple years. He's considered to be one of the greatest Japanese pro wrestlers of the 21st century and of all time in Japan. Plus, he was part of the original NWO in New Japan. So it's one of these things of, he belongs in a Hall of Fame. I'm just not sure that it's the Alliance Hall of Fame. And in saying that, if I was hooked up to a lie detector, it would be going off right now. Because I'm just kidding. I mean, the guy, granted, he had a short run as champion, but it was a very important run. It gave the 10 pounds of gold an international feel. And I mean, I've seen him at MLW up in Philly at the old ECW arena, and the bread chants are just insane. And there's people that are chanting that have no clue about any of his history up until the last couple of years when he started doing the bread chants. And I mean, he comes out to the ring and he's tossing out loaves of bread. It's just insane. And I mean, I can say he doesn't belong in a Hall of Fame, but that's basic bullshit. He belongs in any and all wrestling Hall of Fame. And I mean, if there's a bread Hall of Fame, he belongs in that bread Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Agreed. He is the number one celebrity in terms of supporting the purchasing of bread. And
definitely.
Bread. Great. Well, I heard rather that you mentioned in your full-throated condemnation of Kojima there, that one of the reasons that we shouldn't put him in the Hall of Fame is that he lost that title to Rob Conway, who you are now also arguing for inclusion into the Alliance Wrestling Hall of Fame. Tell us about Rob. That's you, Dave.
All right, let's see. The Con Man. December 28th, 1972. He's currently retired, best known for his work with WWF, WWE, as well as the NWA. He's a former two-time NWA World Heavyweight Champion. He's a 7-time tag champ, a 3-time World Tag Team Champion with Sylvain Grenier as part of La Resistance in the WWE, WWF. 4-time NWA World Tag Champ, once as part of the Iron Gods with Jax Dane. 3 times as part of the Iron Empire with Matt Riviera. He's currently the only wrestler to have held the NWA World Heavyweight and NWA World Tag Team Championships simultaneously. Now, he began his career back in Memphis Championship Wrestling and OVW, teaming with Nick Dinsmore, who you may know as Eugene. They were known as the Limited Edition and the Lords of the Ring. While in OVW, he and Dinsmore were also members of Kenny Boland's Boland Service, along with the Prototype, who you may know as John Cena. Also, Bull Buchanan and Mark Henry. As Lords of the Ring, Conway and Dinsmore won the OVW tag titles on 10 occasions, and the Memphis Championship Wrestling North American tag titles once. He defeated his partner Nick Dinsmore to win the OVW Heavyweight Championship, and the next week Conway won the Heavyweight Championship a record second time. He lost the title to Rico Constantino in November of '99, where he then ended up moving on to the WWF WWE. He had dark matches previously with Kurt Angle and Headbanger Mosh, who at the time was known as Beaver Cleavage. That was a head scratcher.
Such a fucked up gimmick.
Yep. Over the next couple years, he appeared in tryout matches on Velocity and had dark matches against A-Train, Randy Orton, and Hurricane Helms. He ended up making his proper debut for the company in August of 2003 on an episode of Raw, where he was an American Airman. After Conway was harassed by a heel tag team, La Resistance, he ended up invited into the ring by the Dudley Boys. He then ended up turning on them, hit them with the flagpole, and revealed that he was now part of La Resistance. He was part of this trio, and they had, as a tag team, it was almost like the Freebird rules were enforced, that any two of the three guys could wrestle at any time. So it's one of these things that back and forth he went, and I mean, they ended up winning the titles several times. They reclaimed tag gold against Edge and Chris Benoit when Edge ended up walking out on Benoit, and then later on, Benoit ended up walking out on Edge. It was a crazy storyline, but I mean, in a three-way elimination match, they ended up dropping the titles to Regal and Eugene. And then it's one of these, they ended up defeating Regal, and Eugene was injured at the time, and Jonathan Coachman ended up being selected to be his fill-in partner.
Oof.
It was one of these things. They dropped the belts a few weeks later, and it was just the storyline went back and forth, and it's one of these things that La Resistance repeatedly attempted to regain the gold, and they were relegated to being on Heat. So they were ended up. It was one of these storylines that it went down. It's almost like you go down a rabbit hole, and sometimes you see good things, sometimes you see bad. They had lost so many times back and forth that they were just defeated by, I mean, they ended up going into a tag team turmoil match where 5 teams were thrown together. I mean, if you remember the Heartthrobs, which very few people do, Simon Dean and Maven were a tag team. Rosie and Hurricane, I remember, they ended up, it was one of these things that they were thrown together, but they ended up not being so lucky, and the team ended up splitting in mid-May of 2005, and they ended up fighting over which of them was the better wrestler. So they went into singles competition that each of the men were saying they were the better wrestler. So Conway ended up defeating several people And both men competed in a triple threat match against each other. Grenier was a last-minute trade in the 2005 draft, and they ended up sending him away to the Raw brand. So Conway was left on SmackDown, but he ended up relegated to singles competition on Heat. So Conway wrestled and ended up just wrestling by himself, and he was going by the con man, wearing glasses, had a smirk to him. He brought back, I mean, if you look at him, he was almost a cheap knockoff of Buff Bagwell with the glasses, the top hat. He ended up growing a mustache. He had a new haircut, new style, but it was one of these things that he ended up trying to have trying to go over legends, be a legend killer before Randy Orton was doing the legend killer gimmick. He ended up winning over Doink, Greg Valentine, and Coco Beware, but it was one of these things that he ended up making a New Year's resolution that he was on Raw, that he vowed to quit Raw if he ever lost. So he ends up losing to Intercontinental Champion Jeff Hardy, whereas the chairman at the time, Vince McMahon, enters the ring. Instead of letting him quit Monday Night Raw, he ends up firing him. So then he ends up disappearing, and this was in 2007. He was really unheard of for the next several years, ends up in Juggalo Championship Wrestling in 2011. A couple weeks later, he was hired by Sabu's manager, and all hell basically broke loose. It's Juggalo Championship Wrestling. So if you know about the Juggalos,
unfortunately,
yeah, it's one of those things that you never know what's going to happen. His time in Juggalo Championship Wrestling was very short-lived. He ended up in a tag match between him and Rhino, and it was not good. So he ended up leaving a few months later, and ends up in the NWA by end of 2012, the start of 2013. By March of 2013, Conway defeated Cahagas to win the NWA 10 pounds of gold. Now, through their working relationship that NWA had with New Japan, Conway appears via video at New Japan's March 23rd event, announcing that he would be taking part in the promotion's April 7th Invasion Attack event. He was then challenged to a match for the NWA Heavyweight Championship by Kojima. Now, Conway made his debut appearance for New Japan on April 5th when he was accompanied by NWA President Bruce Tharpe. He had an in-ring confrontation with Kojima. And 2 days later, Conway ended up defeating Kojima following interference from Tharpe and Jax Dane, who at the time was Rob Conway's tag partner. Now, he ended up retaining the 10 pounds of gold. And on April 20th, Conway defended the 10 pounds of gold against Chris Masters in Houston, after which he was presented a brand new title. On June 22nd of that same year, Conway returned to New Japan at Dominion, where he successfully defended the 10 pounds of gold against Nakanishi. Now, Later that year in September, Conway would show up in a video at New Japan's pay-per-view at Korakuen Hall to challenge Jushin Thunder Liger to a future title match. Liger came out after the video and accepted the challenge. And on September 29th at Destruction, Conway defeated Jushin Thunder Liger to retain the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. In November of that year, Conway returned to New Japan at Power Struggle, where he and Jax Dane defeated the Killer Elite Squad, Davey Boy Smith Jr., and Lance Archer, and Tenzin and Kojima in the first fall of a two-fall three-way match to win the NWA World Tag Team Championship, making Conway a double champion at that time, and the first wrestler to simultaneously hold both the World Heavyweight and World Tag Team Championships. Now, from November 23rd to December 7th, Dane and Conway took part in New Japan's 2013 World Tag League, where they finished with a record of 3 wins and 3 losses, failing to move on to the finals. Conway was pinned in one of the team's 3 losses, which led to his defeater Kojima getting another shot at the NWA 10 pounds of gold. Now, this is one of those things that on January 4th, 2014, Wrestle Kingdom 8 at the Tokyo Dome, when we ended up losing the NWA World Heavyweight Championship to Kojima. Now, over the next couple months, things went back and forth. And in Las Vegas, Kojima was defeated by Conway in January of that year to retain the 10 pounds of gold for a second reign as World Heavyweight Champion of the NWA. Now, some of his championship highlights include being a 2-time NWA World Heavyweight Champion, a 4-time NWA World Tag Team Champion, 5-time OVW Heavyweight Champion, an 11-time OVW Southern Tag Team Champion, a 3-time WWE WWF World Tag Team Champion as part of La Resistance. He was ranked number 45 of the top 500 singles wrestlers in the PWI 500 in 2004. And that's just one of the highlights that this man who has wrestled, if you look at it, mainly for just a few companies. He really didn't have a big independent career. He made his name starting in OVW and then moving on to WWF and the WWE, moving on to NWA. He wasn't on the lips of everybody as a quote-unquote man of many talents. He could wrestle, he could talk, but it's one of these things that he didn't stand out in a crowd. But given the chance as a champion and as a tag champ with Jax Dane and with Matt Riviera, it was one of these things that he made the best of what was given him. He wasn't the biggest wrestler, but the chances that he was given, he made a name for himself and helped the NWA through, it's not really the wilderness years, it was through a time where it was the lean and mean years.
Yeah.
They talked about, but they weren't on the lips of everybody. You had to be a fan of the NWA. And he was there at a time when he was needed.
Right.
And it's one of these things that if you look at his whole history of wrestling, he's known more as a tag wrestler than as a singles wrestler, but he made a name for himself on both sides of the coin. So if you're looking at him as going into the Alliance Hall of Fame, I'd say yes, because of all the different people he ended up wrestling as part of the National Wrestling Alliance. He could possibly go into other Hall of Fame, other wrestling Hall of Fames. But his time in the WWE, WWF, and OVW, it was good, but he wasn't the best of the best. He was the best at that time when he was in those organizations.
Right.
Looking at the National Wrestling Alliance, I'd say put him in the Alliance Hall of Fame because he worked to give that title an international feel.
He did. And you might say, I think you kind of touched on it. Like he's right in that period of time where, like you, right at the end of the wilderness years, I guess. I would need someone like you or Jake Cal to tell me precisely when that ends. But like Adam Pearce, the title is vacated. Cahagas somehow wins that tournament. And then it's Rob Conway. And like he's got Kojima and he's got Tenzan, right? Like those are both really quality opponents that he ends up dropping both of his titles to. And like right after that, I think it's like it's Nick Aldis. It's Tim Storm, right? Lightning One kind of picks up immediately after that.
Yeah.
So he's kind of in that weird spot. Like could he be in other halls of fame? Like he's in the Hall of Good, I guess. Like but I would agree that he kind of falls into the Alliance Wrestling Hall of Fame. Jeremy, whether he likes to or not, however, must disagree. Tell us why, Jeremy.
Well, to touch on what Dave said, to help solidify my argument, Dave pointed it out pretty succinctly. There were a lot of individuals that crawled so Rob Conway could walk. He rode the coattails of quite a few individuals in his career, from the Sylvain Garniers of the La Resistance to the Kojimas of great breaddom and the NWA. And this is a man that stole and stowed away his path to glory. I mean, again, I look at the smirk on right above my head of that man. I mean, come on, that's a face that a mother would slap the dog piss out of happily. A traitor to America,
great gimmick.
Turned his back. I mean, just didn't even turn. It was a hurricane. It just that quick on America. You can't trust a guy like that. Then turned around and turned his back on his one tag team partner that he had left in La Resistance, and ran him out. And then went on a singles run of obscurity, and then he gets into the NWA, and again he glides right in there on those coattails of Kojima, and it's just a sneaky snake of a man. I'm gonna say it, sneaky snake of a man. Can't trust a guy like that. No. Conway definitely deserves to be in. God, I love these segments. This is some of the most fun I have is coming up with these half-ass arguments just to refute them right afterwards. Just looking at the list of this man has over 50 title reigns to his name.
Dave has many cameras. Yeah, go ahead.
That is impressive. You know, 5-time OVW heavyweight champion, 11-time OVW tag champion, 10 of those with Dinsmore.
I mean, usually we joke because, you know, these guys are so accomplished and it's difficult to argue against, and we all want them to kind of be in. I don't know about Rob Conway. I'm just kidding, too. I agree with you. Like, the man deserves to be in there. I'm waiting for someone to go, like, you guys go, yeah, he's got to be in there. And I can go, no, he doesn't, because I haven't heard one yet. I have not heard one yet. Like, if you don't like Blue Demon, hey, great. You don't like Blue Demon? You
awesome.
Think yeah, great. He was terrible and later in his career. Actually, I think he sometimes still wrestles now. I'm sure he's awful. But, you know, you can at least see why somebody would put him in there. But Rob Conway's not that guy for me. We'll put that post up, and we'll get the votes for that one and for last week's with Damian Wayne, and who we also, I think, kind of argued ought to be in there on both sides of the fence, and especially with what the Alliance is all about. Please do Shinya Hashimoto. Look, I love Shinya Hashimoto almost as much as Steve Corino loved Shinya Hashimoto. He was not a first-round name from any of the inner circle from the ballot, including me, because we only kind of went like 10 each.
Yeah.
Shinya Hashimoto had one of the best potential angles in wrestling. And Roswell says Steve Anthony. I like Steve Anthony as theoretically versus Jushin.
That was a good one.
And Shinya, like, I'm sure you're probably saying like Shinya ought to be there, Willie, and you know, it's hard to argue. Like the kicks to the head of Corino that looked like it was, you know, going to be unscripted and like he'd gone over they planned that shit out, and I mean that was all the work, but it was blown by a promoter. They weren't going to tell anybody. It was going to be a Lawler and Kaufman thing.
Yep.
And it got pooched, and it's too bad. And I love Shinya Hashimoto, and it's a shame that he went so young. But there he. Oh, here's Dave. Sorry, Dave.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, all good. Okay, we'll do that before we go to the second level of hate and championship wrestling from Jeremy. I heard something I had to steal. I'm totally stealing this from Cornette's podcast. I don't know which one. I don't often. I used to listen to that podcast all the time. Now I just, if there's nothing on the podcast list, I'll put it on.
Yeah.
He did a thing the other day with Brian Last, and not that those guys are ever going to listen to us, but where it was like indie wrestler or porn star. So I'm going to give you two guys, and feel free to play along in the chat, the name, and you tell me these aren't their names. I picked these out earlier today. If you think it's an indie wrestler or if you think it's a porn star. We won't do this again. I'm only going to rip those guys off once. It's just too much fun. I laughed the whole time they were doing it. All right. You guys ready? Here we go. All right.
Yeah.
I'll give you sort of some easy ones first. Samurai Steve. Indie wrestler or porn star?
Oh, that's an indie wrestler.
Indie wrestler? What do you think, Dave? Is Dave there? Can't hear you, Dave.
Oh, no.
He's having some troubles today. Anyway, he is, in fact, an indie wrestler. So, 1 for 1. A couple. Again, I'm starting easy. We only got about 10 of these or so. Hardwood Rich Mahogany.
Oh, that's definitely a porn star name.
It is an indie wrestler, in fact, named Rich Mahogany. Hardwood Rich Mahogany.
That's a great wrestling name, though.
It is. By the way, I came across my favorite indie wrestler name of all time. Macho Warrior Rick Hogan. Anyway, Dave, are you there? Are you back? Are you good?
What the actual?
All right. A couple of easy ones now. Rocky Balboner. That's a porn star. That's too easy. Cool Dad, Don Crenshaw.
Oh, that's an indie.
That is an indie wrestler. John Cutesack. Oh, wait. John Cutesack, man. Willie says porn star. There he is. He's back now. John Cutesack, porn star. All right. Cuba Gooding the Third. Indie wrestler or porn star? What do you guys say?
Willie says porn star. I'm gonna say porn star.
Dave, what do you think? Cuba Gooding the Third. Dave's having some troubles tonight. He is an indie wrestler named Cuba Gooding the Third, which I think is hilarious. All right. Buck Adams.
That's a porn star.
You say that like you know that.
I read an article about, if I remember correctly, Buck used to be Buckina.
Oh, I did not know that. Brick Angel. That's a tough one. That could go either way. What do you think, Willie? Willie's out there. He's playing along in the chat. Brick Angel.
That could be either. I'm going to say indie wrestler, but
he's in fact a porn star, but I would have guessed indie wrestler too. Count Jacula.
Oh, good God. Japanese indie wrestler.
It's an indie wrestler. I'm going to get it with that one. I'll do 2 more or so here because these are the harder ones now. Lexington Steel.
Porn star.
That's a porn star. It sounded like one of those NXT names, though.
It does, kind of. What was? Oh no, I was thinking of Sexton Hardcastle.
Sexton Hardcastle, yeah.
That's a porn star name. That is not a wrestler name.
Okay, I'm going to get you guys on these ones now. New in town, Luke Wilcox.
That's a porn name.
It's a porn name. You say porn. Let's see what do you think, Dave? Are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can now. Yeah.
Okay. Luke Wilcox.
Yeah, new in town, Luke Wilcox. What do you think? Indie wrestler or porn star?
Porn star.
Willie's also going porn star. It is an indie wrestler.
What?
Told you I'm going to get you guys on these ones. Okay, Rob Rotten. Oh, is he a Rotten brother?
That's
Oh,
porn star.
That's porn star. Willie says indie wrestler. What do you think, Dave?
Let's go indie wrestler.
Rob Rotten is a porn star. I picked some hard ones today. Okay, last one up. Carter Stevens.
See, that one doesn't give away anything.
It does not.
That sounds like an old classmate.
That's a porn star. How about Woody Johnson?
I used to buy nickel bags off of him.
Oh, shit. Woody Johnson is a porn star. There's a guy on this list named Tom Wanks.
Wow.
Anyway, that was hilarious. That's not our bit. We can't use it again, but I had to do it once.
That was good, though.
That was fun. Let's see championship wrestling from Jeremy.
Attention, everyone. One.
School is in session. Oh, boy, is this great!
Let me talk to you.
Get down to the nitty-gritty.
It's time for championship wrestling from Jeremy.
The second level of hate. Level 2. Mild dislike. Level 1's like annoyance. Level 2, you're starting to get on my nerves. I got the giggles now. Take it away, my friend.
All right. For level 2 of the 7 levels of hate, the stipulation for this one was a Boston street fight. They were at the New England Championship Wrestling in beautiful Bridgewater, Massachusetts, June 8th of 2012. Now, from the get-go, unlike last time, Pearce was able to get his sneak attack in as he caught Colt while posing right after his introduction. I love how Colt wore a jacket with professional wrestler or pro wrestler emblazoned across the back of it, because the guy's not going to pass the airport test any other fucking way. But Colt quickly recovered. He cracked Pearce a few times in the corner before asking the crowd where they wanted to see Pearce get thrown out to. After picking his side, he threw Pearce to the floor, and with the crowd firmly behind him, Colt continued his assault on Adam, although there were a few chanting for Pearce. Colt attempted the first pinfall of the match, but only got a 1 count. Cabana then got some help from kids in the crowd, and they laid the smackdown upon Pearce. No pun intended. Well, kind of. Colt rolled Adam back into the ring and then gave the kids that helped him high fives. Pearce took advantage of this and toped through the ropes, crashing into Cabana, and in the process, almost taking out a young CM Punk fan. This was years before they even started feuding together, so that was a little foreshadowing there, I think. Now with the upper hand, Pearce took Cabana and threw him into the audience seating. As I was telling the guys backstage, I'm probably being generous here. There looked to be about 200, 250 people in a room that looked like where you'd go to see a knockoff Tony Robbins motivational speaker at the Days Inn off Highway 57 at Podunk, US of A. But you'd have thought that they were watching a main event, the main event of Mania on night 2, honestly. These two had the crowd in the palm of their hands. From here, Adam continued his assault, bouncing Cabana's head off of chairs, closed fist punches to the head and face, and even gnawing of the forehead. Pearce was letting his hatred of Cabana take front stage, and it was glorious to see. As Pearce got Cabana back into the ring, a member of the crowd must have grabbed the bottom rope or something, because this caused Pearce to go over, scream at him a little bit, get a little heel heat, and kick the bottom rope. But this gave Cabana the moment and opening he needed to attempt to get back on the offense and regain control of the match. He felt horribly on wobbly knees, as a thumb to the eye was all Pearce needed to send him back out to the floor. Pearce hoisted Cabana up and was going to put him through a table. The table that Pearce attempted to put Cabana through, however, was the table and didn't break. Shout out to you, Matthew. I know you ain't watching, but Pearce then showed the table that he is the scrap daddy and promptly dropped an elbow onto Colt, and in turn broke the legs, effectively setting up the table for the scrapyard later that week. Wrestling can be full circle, folks. From here, Pearce got Colt back in the ring and hit a lariat before trying for a pin. This got a 2 count. Pearce again hits a lariat to only get a 2 count again. He then calls for the title and goes to hit Colt, who ducked at the last moment. Colt then gets the title and is successful in nailing Adam right between the eyes. It was at this point that Colt folded the title up and placed it on the ring apron. Now, I don't believe anyone there would have thought any less of Colt had he decided to start wailing on Adam with the world title, but I applaud him for not taking the easy way out. Instead, Colt gets the crowd worked back up so he can feed off of that energy before unloading on a bloody Pearce. Cabana lands blow after blow upon Adam's split cranium before delivering the near-lethal Cabana elbow. None of this is enough to take Pearce off his feet as he asks for another elbow. Colt, more than happy to oblige, winds up and delivers another, to which Pearce straightened up some and responded with a spit to the face of Cabana. Cabana wound up and threw a little stank on this one and dropped one and dropped an elbow to Cabana or to Adam's head that dropped him like a ton of bricks. With the crowd worked up into a frenzy, Colt looked to them seemingly for approval to unleash brutality upon Pearce. The crowd agreed, and Colt laid out punches and bunches upon the scrap daddy. After that, Colt hits a beautiful moonsault and then goes to grab a chair leaning up against the wall after only getting a 2 count. As Colt gets back in the ring, stirring a boot, Pearce seizes the opportunity to snatch up Colt and deliver a DDT, planting Colt's head squarely onto the seat. This riles up the crowd, who start Colt chants again, upsetting Pearce. Pearce places the chair between the top and bottom rope as he went to throw Colt into it. Colt halted his momentum and caught Adam with a gut punch. Pearce continued to charge ahead forward, but Colt was able to sidestep, and Adam went headfirst into the trap, or into his own trap. Colt then locks on the weirdest looking Boston Crab I've ever seen. It was all crotch to crack, not crack to crack. So I was a little thrown off there. But the ref attempted 3 times to see if Pearce could keep his arm up, and he wasn't able to. The bell rang, and Colt is now 2-0 with 5 matches to go in this. I loved how they kept. Again, I pointed out that there was maybe 200 people there. I could be wrong on that, but it really seemed like they built the match around trying to keep it outside and in the crowd as much as possible, which definitely got the crowd that much more involved. Colt working the kids into it and allowing them to get some blows in on Pearce is always good business.
Yeah.
Anytime that you can get the crowd interacted in it and what you've got going on is a good thing. And the levels that they went to ensure that they put on one hell of a main event for this crowd is a true testament to how much that this business means to both of these men. Adam Pearce last week, I believe it was, did an AMA kind of on Facebook, and I was able to ask him what his favorite match of the series was, and that's the match that I'll be talking about next week, and that's level 3. So I'm really looking forward to talking about that one. I both of these men are individuals that I'm not entirely versed on their wrestling careers per se. I know more about Colt Cabana in wrestling, but more the podcast and the CM Punk drama and all the shit that came on with that. This is all of this is going on at a time where I was working at 10 p.m. to 7, so I wasn't really watching wrestling during this time frame. So I'm being introduced to this, not exactly with fresh eyes, because I've watched the 7 levels matches, but I'm actually watching them this time, and I'm finding a real appreciation for the level of detail that these men put into essentially throwaway matches. Granted, these are main event matches for these promotions at this point in time. But for the rest of the wrestling world, there's a lot of people that have no fucking clue about these.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that I found them and that I'm taking the time to sit down and watch them. I recommend that everybody sit down and dissect these matches like I am, and just pick out these little details and these little intricacies that these two men put into these matches that in turn made them runner up for Feud of the Year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in a time when nobody was watching. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how good they were. Like the like you mentioned, Adam Pearce and Colt Cabana are like two guys who, I mean, Colt's, whatever your opinion is on his style or the CM Punk thing, I have no opinion on that, but those two guys both had such a love for what they were doing and at a time that they were doing it on both sides of the camera, especially for Pearce, I think. And I saw an AMA a long time ago that I read it. I don't remember. I think it was Australia, where some guy said, I was an announcer for one of your matches in Australia. And you came into the ring or to the little arena or whatever. The music was so loud. He was playing the heel, pointing at everybody and yelling and everything, right? They turned over the ring announcer, and he's pointing. He said, "You were pointing and yelling at me, and nobody could hear you because the music was so loud. You were saying, 'You're a good announcer. You enunciate well, and I like what you talk about. Keep it up.'"
See, that's great.
Yeah, I love that little story about Adam Pearce. But they're what a series. I think that I get the wrong thing here. I think that Sam Retro, I haven't seen in a while. Sam is on Discord. I think he's put them up not too long ago on the content channel on Discord. I think he's put most of them up anyway. So they are there.
Yep.
That's awesome. Looking forward to number 3, his favorite. Maybe I'll go watch it in advance and see it. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Where are we? Oh, okay. I am super interested in this one.
Yeah.
Let's talk to Dave Scooby, Fantasy Booker, and I Respect You, Booker Man. Such a cool intro. Are you there, Dave? You're on mute if you are. As Dave asked the question, we all hope, how would the wrestling landscape look if Bruiser Brody hadn't died in Puerto Rico? We hope Dave's there. Are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
All right. Yes, we can. Yeah.
All right. The question, what if Bruiser Brody hadn't been stabbed and murdered in Puerto Rico? What would it look like? Well, on July 17th, 1988, at the age of 42, Bruiser Brody was stabbed and murdered in Puerto Rico by Invader One. He was one of the most respected big men in the business. It's scary to actually. I saw him wrestle one time in Central States in Kansas City, and just he was a monster among men. He was 6'7", 6'8", 300 pounds, and just the monster. The eyes rolling back. The just the massiveness of this man.
Furry boots. You're cutting out pretty bad right now, Dave.
Can you hear me any better?
Yep, that's much better.
Okay. Sorry. Respected big man in the business, but he also had a reputation as being hard to deal with backstage. Now, would Brody have taken the paycheck and worked for the WWF as a monster heel? Would he have helped put Hogan over? Or would he have moved on from Puerto Rico during the demise of the territories and worked for Japan, similar to Bam Bam, Hansen, and Dr. Death? Maybe even wrestle for Japan up until he moved on to WCW coming into play and been used there as a monster heel. Imagine him and Vader having a match, him and Sting. He could make or break people just by wrestling them. He didn't have to win. He just had to be in the match and make it a good one. Knowing Brody, he wouldn't have put anyone over unless the money was there, which leads me to think that he might have eventually left for the WWF to get a paycheck or two before leaving Vince high and dry at a pay-per-view and going back to Japan to close out his career. He wrestled for Vince Sr. back in '76 in the WWF, but I think his a short but impactful career of maybe 2 to 3 years, give or take, feuding with Warrior, Yokozuna, and Undertaker, he would have made those wrestlers even more in their runs in the WWF and later in the WWE. Or imagine him teaming up with Jake Roberts as a sadistic tag team. By the time the Nitro Arrow came around, I could see him basically being used early on, but phased out as NWO stuff ends up taking off. But seeing that WCW and Japan had a good relationship due to Eric Bischoff, he could have finished off his career working for both WCW and New Japan, since they had a very good working relationship, and finish out his career, or he could also go back to All Japan and deal with them as a favor, maybe going to Misawa's Pro Wrestling Noah, as Brody was very huge in the Japanese market and was willing to work with and against almost anybody if the money was right. Now, could I see him involved in ECW and maybe serving as a conduit between them and the WWF? Definitely.
Yeah.
Now, ECW, he's revered by their fan base. If you look at Brody, he's a founding father of hardcore before ECW was in existence. But you had to pay him and pay him well, and I could see him leaving the first time that Heyman doesn't pay him. But I could also see him getting into a backstage role and trying to help Paul run ECW. But the thing was, Brody was trying to reestablish himself in wrestling and make things right with Baba, being that he jumped ship back in '85. He was preparing for a life after wrestling, or at least after his wrestling career. He was interested in possibly becoming a promoter, and I could have seen him finding a way either into Japanese management here in the US or over in Japan, and maybe even partnering up with Vince, Eric, or need I say Paul Heyman. Now, it was one of his things, a big source of conflict that resulted or may have resulted in his murder was his desire to buy into the Puerto Rican territory.
Right.
It was never proven, but it was rumored that he was going to buy Gorilla Monsoon's stake in Puerto Rico and fire Invader One, and that's why the stabbing took place. Now, I could see him buying into this company in Puerto Rico, working it, and possibly working a deal with ECW. I could see bouncing back and forth between Japan, US, and Puerto Rico, and getting the best of the best and having everybody work together almost as a territory system of his own. Now, I personally think that Brody would work best in ECW. The hardcore style, the possibility of a backstage role, if Heyman could have secured a backer to help guarantee money for the talent and the people working for ECW. Now, if Brody was around at the time to confront Shane Douglas after throwing down the NWA title, Brody was a former NWA Central States heavyweight champion, a Florida heavyweight champion, and an international NWA heavyweight champion in All Japan, as well being a tag team champion in the NWA along the likes of Ernie Ladd, Kerry Von Erich, Gino Hernandez, Stan Hansen, and Dick Slater. I'd bring him into ECW, have him go after Douglas, and have him be a rep for the NWA with a few other former NWA talents, such as Terry Funk, who ended up going to ECW, Jerry Lawler, who worked with both WWF and ECW, Dusty Rhodes, and maybe even from his time in World Class, bring in Kevin Von Erich and have these guys go against the extreme wrestlers in ECW, but have them end up falling against ECW. And in doing that, Brody turns on them and joins ECW as an enforcer for Paulie Dangerously. Imagine Brody versus Bam Bam, or Sandman versus Brody. Those two, I mean, with just, I don't know, one or two title reigns, he could have helped make these wrestlers even bigger and better. Imagine the mind games and the matches with Raven and his flock. Spending the rest of the 90s jumping between ECW, maybe even Puerto Rico and Japan. have Brody as a talent, have him part of a booking committee in ECW? Would ECW become more successful with Brody? In my opinion, possibly. If Paulie would have had somebody as a financial backer, this would have been huge. ECW did have some Japanese talent, but imagine more Japanese talent coming in because of the affiliation with Bruiser Brody and him wrestling over in All Japan and New Japan. And even a couple years later, the 1997 ECW invasion of WWF, imagine Brody walking into the WWF in Philadelphia. Imagine what could have been. What if Bruiser Brody had never been stabbed and murdered in Puerto Rico? It's one of these things that you question how far he would have gone. He died at the age of 42. He had a few more years of wrestling, and I could have seen him wrestling maybe up to age 50, depending on what they decided to do with him. He was a wrestler like Andre. He didn't have to have a title to be important. He was a mainstay in certain areas to help put people over, but he had to agree to it. He had the final say. But in my mind, I can imagine me watching some of the old ECW. I could see him fitting in ECW the easiest. He could have made money in the WWF and WCW when they were giving out guaranteed contracts. He could have made some money, but it's one of these things that in the majors, I could have seen him only maybe a year to a 2-year program to help put over others. Maybe have a short run, but he was an attraction. He didn't need the belt to be over.
Yep.
So it's one of these things of who knows what could have happened. The question is, what could have been and what should have been. If he wouldn't have been stabbed, I could have seen him going a couple more years, moving into a management role, or at least part of management. And ideally, ECW could have survived maybe another 3 to 5 years, which would have made WCW and WWF, WWE work harder to better their product and not just cherry pick other wrestlers from other organizations.
Yeah. Yeah, he drew money.
Oh, definitely.
And I mean, you know more than me, but as I recall, it was like I got the first wrestling match I ever remember seeing was turning around on TV on this lady's house who lived beside us, kind of like a grandmother, was Abdullah the Butcher versus Bruiser Brody, which I got a lot of action figures in a box for Sam Retro, and I kept these two because that's my favorite. But they got the fuzzy boots and everything, man. Look at that, it's awesome. But if I remember correctly, one of the reasons that he was difficult to work with, it wasn't always just, he had to get paid or whatever. If he didn't like you, kind of in the way, like you mentioned, like Andre the Giant, if he didn't like you, you were gonna feel it. Like, remember Lex Luger, that story, going over the top of the cage in Florida, right? I'm out. Because Brody I'm not going to sell. But part of it too was because he was so big in Japan that Baba wasn't going to let him just go all over the place, where he was under some form of contract and just get his butt handed to him. And actually, the same with Abdullah. And like when you get an attraction like those guys like that, you could take them anywhere. I think Willie had said wrestled in St. Louis and in world class. In world class, like it was always Gary Hart and the Monsters, right? And like you could just bring them in and he would just make somebody bleed with a chain, or Abdullah would stab him with a fork. But I could see that you could use like how influential he might have been behind the scenes, for sure. If he could have bridged that gap, if he could have gotten some of the guys in different places. Yeah, I think it's a good question, Dave. Thanks very much. Appreciate it. I look forward to next week as always. What are we doing? Is that it? Is that all we got today? I think that's it, right? That's an hour and a half. You guys ready to get out of here?
Got corned beef going.
There you go. There you go. Thanks everybody who was here. Hope to be back. We've been away for a couple of weeks, so cutting it a little short, but until next time, we'll see you on a point with both arms for Dave, Jeremy, so that we can. We'll see you at the matches.
Thanks for joining the stream. This has been a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com. We genuinely appreciate your support. Would you consider subscribing so you'll never miss a future episode? I'd also like to remind you we do a live stream every Tuesday at 5 p.m. before NWA Power. You can find us on social media at The Alliance Blog. And until next time, we are The Alliance.